than it is an attempt to open a discussion.
Well, I think it's a demonstrable evidence that through society's demographics that being white has societal privileges that being black does not. But
we can talk about how that manifests, because that's
I'm also interested in what you just said now, is that you would stand next to anyone who has this. So, Mr. Shapiro, my question to you is, for Ms. Dunston, the tying the noose around the campus and writing messages that target African-American young students, would you consider that hate speech, and then would you stand next to her and fight for her?
The exchange begins calmly, but beneath the surface, tension builds. A congresswoman confidently introduces the topic of white privilege, expecting Shapiro to hesitate. She cites examples and names scholars to sound authoritative, hoping to corner him in an academic web. The atmosphere feels formal but charged, like a debate waiting to explode. What she doesn't expect, however, is that Shapiro has heard this argument hundreds of times before and is ready to dismantle it piece by piece. The crowd senses something major is about to unfold.
Mr. Shapiro, you talked about white privilege, and just this week, I had a conversation with Rachel Lazar, who's done some work, a Jewish American woman who's done some work on this area, as well as having extensive conversations with Dr. Greg Parks of Wake Forest University, who's also talked quite a bit about critical race theory. And it's my understanding that white privilege is not telling individuals that they cannot speak, but it is a term for societal privilege that...
The Congresswoman poses a pointed question. Would Shapiro defend a student responsible for racist actions on campus? It's a setup designed to make him look hypocritical, defend free speech, and you seem to defend hate. But Shapiro doesn't flinch. He listens patiently, then responds with precision, turning the moral trap into an opportunity to clarify principle. His calm, deliberate tone contrasts sharply with her emotionally charged delivery. The audience can already tell this isn't going to be the one-sided exchange she planned.
That individuals have as a benefit of their white skin. And I don't think that, and I think universities would be remiss to then say that because you're white, you're not allowed to say anything that's critical of white people. I didn't know that white privilege actually went into that sphere. My understanding is it's just, and the issue is that white privilege makes people uncomfortable to talk about the societal privilege that they have.
Well, to me, what I say on campuses all the time is if you want to cite instances of racism that we can all find and fight together, that's something that I'm more than willing to stand next to you and fight, because that's obviously stuff that we should fight together. But when you just say that there is a white privilege out there in the ether and that by dint of birth your skin color generates for you an advantage, what you're really saying to people is that your view is less valuable because you have not experienced what I've experienced. And that is an identity argument, that's a character argument, that's not a rational political argument that can actually be taken on in any way. It's more of a cudgel and a club than it is an attempt to open a discussion.
Well, I think it's a demonstrable evidence that through society's demographics that being white has societal privileges that being black...
Now comes a shift. Shapiro explains that if people point to specific cases of racism, he'll gladly stand beside them to fight it. But claiming that every white person is privileged by birth isn't a solution, it's an accusation. He calls out the ideology for what it is, identity politics masquerading as moral truth. His phrasing is surgical, exposing how the concept of white privilege silences conversation instead of opening it. The room goes still. Even critics can't help but recognize the clarity in his reasoning.
Black does not, but I
we can talk about how that manifests, because that's
I'm also interested in what you just said now, is that you would stand next to anyone who has this. So, Mr. Shapiro, my question to you is, for Ms. Dunston, the tying the noose around the campus and writing messages that target African-American young students, Would you consider that hate speech, and then would you stand next to her and fight for her?
As I say, I
against
would.
that?
This is the first I'm hearing about it, honestly. But
Really?
Yeah. But from hearing about it, maybe because it's local. I mean, I'm from LA. But in any case, I'm more than happy to stand alongside her and fight whatever group was responsible for this. Not only more than happy. I mean, you're talking about the alt-right. Again, I was the #1 target of anti-Semitic harassment from the alt-right last year.
Thank you.
I'm more than happy to do all that. And I think there's one more distinction that has to be made. When we talk about cases like Taylor's, they're horrific, and the administration is siding with Taylor. Okay, the administration is doing the right thing by Taylor, or trying to do the right thing by Taylor, as they should be. And I think that we need to make a distinction between cases where the administration is actively participating in the suppression of speech and cases in which the administration is trying to do the right thing in order to punish people for application of crime.
The Congresswoman tries to recover, repeating familiar lines about demonstrable evidence and systemic demographics. But it sounds rehearsed, not reasoned. Shapiro's logic has shifted the tone from emotion to evidence, and she can't keep up. Her words, though polished, begin to feel hollow against his direct clarity. The tension builds as she leans further on abstract claims while Shapiro keeps bringing the discussion back to individual responsibility and shared humanity. Slowly, the audience realizes she's debating from script. He's debating from understanding. She doubles down, bringing up a campus hate crime to force Shapiro into a corner. But instead, he flips it perfectly. He condemns the act without hesitation, says he'd stand with the victim, and then draws the crucial line between criminal punishment and speech punishment. That distinction cuts straight through the noise. He reminds everyone that free speech means protecting even those we disagree with. The crowd reacts with stunned silence. The ideological trap just imploded. Shapiro has turned defense into dominance. By now, the Congresswoman looks visibly frustrated. Every rhetorical move has failed. Shapiro calmly reiterates that real hate must be fought, but ideas must be debated, not banned. He mentions how he himself has faced harassment from extremists, proving that his stance comes from principle, not politics. His composure exposes the weakness of moral posturing. Feelings can't substitute for facts. Each line he delivers tightens the argument, leaving no space for ideological maneuvering. Then, the commentary widens its focus. The narrator points out that this moment isn't just about two people. It's about the larger cultural battle between emotion and reason. Shapiro represents debate grounded in logic. His opponent, a system addicted to outrage. As her talking points collapse, his argument rises into clarity. Racism is evil, but dividing people by race to fight it only deepens the wound. The closing tone is powerful yet calm, a reminder that truth doesn't shout, it stands firm. When intellect meets ideology, only one walks away standing.